Ukraine War 23 halves, Russia counterattacks in Kursk. Kiev admits defeat. Russia accelerates across the battlefield. The military summary channel reported that Moscow's forces continued their offensive, putting the Ukrainian army, AFU, at a disadvantage along the entire 1,000 kilometers front as well as on the Kursk front. After a major mechanized attack by the Ukrainian army south of Sudra in the Kursk region, the Russian army, RFAF, counterattacked and regained control of some areas of Cherkasskaya Konopelka. However, the highest level of activity was once again in the south of Donetsk. The main thrusts were focused on Velika Novoselka and Kurakhov. At the same time, a series of new geolocation videos appeared showing that Moscow's forces were west of Andreyuka and the situation in Kostiantynopy was becoming more tense. In the Lyman direction, the RFAF also captured the village of Novolyabyuka, north of the Oskil River in the Kharkov region. Photos show Russian troops in the center of the village of Topoly, successfully establishing another bridgehead. Russia counterattacks in Kursk. Ukraine admits defeat. According to the Redovka channel, the main task of the Russian troops on the Kursk front is to approach the highway by all means, ideally to control the field, or at least to suppress the enemy's logistical lifeline with mortar fire and UAVs. In order to completely destroy everything moving on the road, they can approach the road from one of two main directions, from the west or the east. The bottleneck at the narrowest point is 13 to 14 kilometers. From the west it will be a little closer, since from there the RFAF can go straight to the highway, while from the east they have to go around Sudra with its dense urban area, which provides cover for the enemy. In addition, in the east there are many natural obstacles such as ravines covered with forests and other inconveniences, including a poor road network. However, all these obstacles are not too complicated for both sides. Only, the Kiev forces want to keep the protruding horseshoe. They must protect both flanks, east, west, and at the same time not to weaken the defense of other areas too much. Because if the entire remaining area is abandoned to concentrate on the two wings and if the Russians break through to the strategic city of Sudra, for example, from the north, the AFU will be at an extremely disadvantage. There are difficulties on the Russian side, the most serious of which is the lack of forces around Sudra. The RFAF assault group has elite units. For example, the 155th Marine Brigade, Kursk, of the Pacific Fleet. But their common problem is running out of steam after losses. They have to wait until their numbers recover. In addition, for the Kiev forces, political considerations are always more important than military calculations, and the Kursk region has many well-trained and well-equipped AFU brigades, including a lot of armored vehicles. Therefore, the fighting remains extremely tense. What is happening is still in the fog. But some things can be said for sure. Over the past 2 days, the Kiev side has admitted to losing the village of Svedlikovo on the western side of the arc. Images from the scene have emerged, clearly showing that the Russian military is in control of the village. What is the importance of this village? The problem is that from Svedlikovo there are two routes to the precious highway 38K004. The first is a straight one. Along this 2-lane asphalt road leading to Sudra there are fields and ravines with sparse forests. The RFAF can control the road with all kinds of fire because the terrain here is relatively flat. This is fascinating and it is understandable why the Russian military is fighting hard to seize positions east of Svedlikovo and even northeast. Near Lebedovka, a wide frontage to the highway within range of anti-tank missiles, ATGMs, would spell disaster for the AFU. Secondly, from this village to the highway there is another route, opposite in characteristics. The Loknya river flows through Svedlikovo, turning south along the bottom of the ravine. Various vegetation grows on it, helping to conceal movement. Together, this creates a corridor that is barely visible from the outside, about 100 meters wide at its narrowest points and up to half a kilometer at its widest. This corridor extends to the village of Basovka in the Sumy region of Ukraine. From Svedlikovo the shortest distance to the highway is about 6.5 kilometers. But from Basovka it is only 3 to 4 kilometers. And here, whoever controls the ravine will have a rather fragile but sheltered position. This is most likely where the RFAF will attempt to take over. In this case, the AFU will hold Sudra and its surroundings to the last possible point. But it will be difficult to maintain logistics if the road is cut off. The Kiev command knows how much of a threat losing control of the road will be to them. As a result, the Ukrainian army is counterattacking in Svedlikovo but so far has not been successful. As for the Russian troops advancing to the southeast, both along the road and along the river, the Kiev command ordered a halt, but no actual action was taken. However, There is still time in any case for the negotiations to be successful. A serious success on the battlefield just before the dialogue begins would not be superfluous. For Russia, the complete expulsion of the AFU from the Kursk region is the best possible option. Ryba reported that in the Kursk region, Moscow forces have stepped up efforts to expel the Ukrainian troops from the Russian-controlled territories. Moreover, information about the RFAF crossing the border into the Sumy region has indeed become clear. They are entering the Juravka area in small groups, supported by armored vehicles. Moscow forces, relying on a stronghold in the Nikolaevo-Derino area, are in relatively stable control of the northern part of the village. Now the assault troops are fighting right in the center of the settlement, where the AFU is actively counterattacking from Balavodi. The RFAF's zone of control is also expanding near Sverdlikovo. At the same time, despite reports that the Russian army is advancing on Novinkoye, in reality, fighting is still going on in Sverdlikovo, with Kiev forces occasionally sending armored vehicles into the southern and eastern suburbs. To the west of Sverdlikovo, some of the forest belts north of the border from the Russian side have also been taken. But the enemy still maintains a presence in the southern positions. In addition, northeast of Sverdlikovo, Russian paratroopers have begun an attack on the Lebedovka area, where they control the entire northern part of the settlement and are advancing further. Fierce fighting is also taking place in this area as the AFU tries to hold Lebedevka, preventing a breakthrough in the direction of Kazakya Loknia. If the mission is accomplished, the RFAF will cut off a significant group of enemy forces in Ivashkovsky, Cherkasky Pochny, as well as in the Malaya Loknia and Pogrebki areas. In Malaya Loknia and Pogrebki, Moscow forces are only present in the northern suburbs, where fierce fighting is taking place, and they have not yet been able to advance south. Clashes also continue in Nikolskoye, but neither side has gained the upper hand to declare full control. On the eastern flank in the Ulenka area, where the AFU had previously actively attacked and captured Cherkaskaya Konopelka and Fanasevika, the RFAF counterattacked, driving the enemy out of the forest belts near Fanasevika and recapturing Cherkaskaya Konopelk. There is currently no information on the situation north and northeast of Konopelka. Sources from the scene have not yet been able to answer the question of whether anyone controlled the Lotus gas station that the AFU had previously set foot on. And if so, who controlled it? Meanwhile, fierce counterattacks continue in the Gvevo area, where Moscow units are trying to advance north of the Sul riverbed. Leaning against Plekhovo, the Kiev command has brought in reinforcements, including armored vehicles, into Gvevo. So far, the RFAF has not been able to advance, and fierce fighting is still going on. Ukraine has lost Andriivka. The RV Voyenkary channel reported that Moscow units are clearing the outskirts of the Abdryuka settlement, west of Kurakhov. Kiev forces also confirmed new RFAF successes in this area. Novopavlovsk direction, fierce fighting is also going on in Konstantinople. The RFAF needs to take it at all costs. Now they are systematically approaching the village from the east and are holding the only road. Not all AFU equipment can get there, as fiber optic UAVs are constantly destroying any vehicles that appear. Pressure on Razliv is also increasing. If this village falls, Moscow forces will be able to cut off supplies and evacuate Konstantinople. Attacks north of Andriivka also continue and there is a battle in the western suburbs. The pro-Kiev source wrote, Ukrainian General Staff, 1/3 of the battles took place in Pokrovsk. Ukrainska Pravda reported that the Ukrainian General Staff's report on the evening of February 22 said that since the beginning of the day, there have been 107 clashes, mostly in the Pokrovsk direction with 34 clashes, while in the Kursk region, the RFAF attacked Ukrainian positions 12 times. The report said, Russia carried out 59 airstrikes, using 107 Cub bombs. In addition, they deployed 755 suicide UAVs. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that the defense forces had stopped the enemy's attempts to penetrate in Kharkov, Kupiansk, Liman, Seversk, Kramatorsk, Toretsk, Novopavlovsk, Orekov and Dnieper. The AFU continued to operate in the Kursk direction, where the RFAF carried out 12 attacks. In the direction of Pokrovsk, Moscow forces attempted to break through Ukrainian defenses 34 times but were stopped and suffered significant losses. In the past 24 hours, 265 Russian soldiers were neutralized, including 112 killed. Many vehicles and weapons were destroyed or damaged. The report said, Ukrainian air defenses are operating in Kiev. The Ukrainian Air Force reported that in Kiev, on Saturday evening, air defenses were operating against Russian UAVs. Debris from enemy UAVs fell in various areas of the city, causing fires and damage. At 22:24, an air raid alert was sounded in Kiev, and explosions soon followed. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko announced there were several explosions in the capital. Air defenses are operating. The city administration said air defenses are actively operating in Kiev. For safety reasons, we strongly recommend staying in shelters. At 0:21 on February 23, local authorities reported that fragments of UAVs fell in the Donetsky district. A fire broke out, and a private house and several cars were damaged. Mayor Klitschko added, air defenses are firing in Obolong. The enemy UAV attack on the capital continues. Zelensky discusses next batch of F-16s with Dutch PM. European Pravda reported that on February 22, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a phone call with Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof. Leader Zelensky said the Netherlands had confirmed its position that there would be no discussions between Ukraine and Europe without their participation. We are grateful to the Netherlands for all the support it has provided and for its willingness to continue and increase its support for Ukraine. This is very important for the stability of the whole of Europe. We expect further deliveries of F-16s this year, he added. The Dutch Prime Minister, on the other hand, noted that he had assured Ukraine of continued military, financial and political support. A ceasefire without Ukraine and Europe at the negotiating table is not an option. For the future of Ukraine and Europe, Russia must not be allowed to win this conflict, Prime Minister Schoof stressed. The fighter alliance led by the United States, Denmark and the Netherlands, established in 2023, began delivering F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine last year. Kiev received the first Dutch fighter jets in October 2024 and the second batch arrived in Ukraine in early February. NATO wants to extend fuel pipeline to the east. Spiegel said that the North Atlantic Alliance, NATO, wants to build a pipeline designed to supply fuel to its eastern flank in the event of a war on its territory. Since the Cold War, there have been two fuel pipelines within NATO territory that extend to Germany. But neither has reached East Germany, which was then under Soviet rule. After the Russia-Ukraine conflict erupted in 2022, NATO decided to plan for the construction of additional pipelines, which are now the main fuel supply system in the alliance. The option chosen is to extend the existing pipelines to Eastern Europe, and since they end in Germany, the region plays a key role in the construction. One pipeline is expected to be extended to the Czech Republic, the other to Poland, Spiegel said. Options for connecting the pipeline systems are also being considered. The total construction cost in Germany is estimated at €21 billion, $21.97 billion. And full implementation could take 20 to 25 years. According to Spiegel, the main obstacles to the project's implementation are the uncertainty caused by the new US administration, as well as possible protests from residents living near future construction sites. The idea of expanding the NATO fuel pipeline has also been raised by Poland earlier. EU considers seizing Russian assets to compensate for damages to Ukraine. Bloomberg, citing its own sources, said that the European Union, EU, is exploring further ways to use frozen Russian assets, in particular to compensate for damages to Ukraine. According to Bloomberg's sources, EU officials are discussing various ways to use Russian assets within the framework of the International Reparations Commission. This is a mechanism that should be created under the auspices of the European Council to compensate the Ukrainian people for losses caused by Russia's actions in Ukraine. The mechanism is expected to be implemented in 2025. Bloomberg sources said the EU is discussing a theoretical option of seizing frozen Russian assets if the country refuses to pay compensation. Another option being discussed in the European Union is giving member states the right to seize Russian sovereign assets to compensate for the destruction of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. The EU, along with the G7 countries and Australia, has frozen about $280 billion in Russian central bank assets in securities and cash, mostly through Belgian clearinghouse Euroclear. Sanctions against Russian citizens have led to the freezing of another $58 billion in assets.